Welcome to Power Talks with Santosh. During the last month, Nepal went through a turbulent political shift. And as a result, today we have an unnatural political conflict, which is very complicated to understand. Today we have with us Mr. Yubaraj Ghimire, the president of Asia Media Forum and Nepal's prominent journalist and political analyst. Prime Minister Prachanda was persistent about the removal of Chief of Army, General Rukmangat Katwal, despite the fact that he knew it was not going to be an easy task. This stubbornness even led to the resignation of himself from the post of Prime Minister. For Prachanda, was this a political suicide or just another chapter of his continued master grand design plan?
Well, I don't think it's his political suicide, although it has led to his resignation as Prime Minister. But Prachanda also is the chairman of a political party which doesn't want him to make major compromises on issues that are so close to the party and especially its guerrillas. So that is something he'd been telling, that he is not going to adopt the Nepal army, that he'll try to create as much confusion in the Nepal army as possible. And that was part of that design. I wouldn't call it a master grand design or whatever, because its implications are serious, and I don't think Prachanda is only going to gain out of it, because Prachanda is also stands discredited amidst Nepali masses, and more than that, the international community which supported him in the peace process. And he was consistent in assuring them all through that, our being part of the peace and democratic process is not only tactical, we are very serious about it. So what he did goes against that, because it has come, in a background of certain public utterances by Prachanda and his senior leaders that they will capture powers, not through mandate of the people, but, through other means. So when he was so determined to create confusion in the Nepal army, we cannot rule out that it was part of that design.
Now, what is the message that this precise calculation or simple stupidity given out to the international community?
No, I think the precise message was, or the calculation, let's say rather miscalculation was that if we are able to remove him and have somebody that we trust as his successor, then Nepal army will not be posing any obstacle to Maoist takeover of power, one. Two, at the cost of the Nepal army, Prachanda would have succeeded in bolstering the image of the Maoist combatants, about 19,000 in number as verified by the United Nations mission to Nepal. So you would have, so there was a risk factor. He must have had in his mind that I don't know whether there was a backup plan, but this misfired. No political party and army didn't accept it. And the president, Prachanda also not only tried to undermine the authority of the president, who is the supreme commander of Nepal army, but he refused to recognize the existence of the president's office. Because after all, these are some things, removal of an army chief or appointment of a new army chief are something to be formalized by the president. But here is a case where the Prime Minister simply appropriates that power and leaves the president with a fait accompli.
In 2006, the Seven-Party Alliance took a major leadership in trying to bring the rebel Maoists into the mainstream politics, and they were successful with that. Especially the NC and UML can be credited for the fact that they went out of the way to bring Maoists into the mainstream. Today, we see the present political crisis as a silent conflict that could, again, break the peace process. But then we don't see the NC and UML coming together to continue with their peace process. Rather, they seem to be with their vested interests of trying to see if they can form the government themselves. How do you see this selfish act?
In politics, sometimes situation arises where political parties have to react. This is a situation where almost every party is going to react. It was not a mandate, clearly, for the Maoists to rule, because it was a fractured mandate with the Maoists emerging as the single largest party, sort of majority of their own. So on the basis of certain programs and policies, Maoists led the government. with the understanding that all the major decisions will be taken in through consensus. But on the question of army chief, when the Prime Minister ignored the suggestions given by other political parties, then major basis of that understanding collapsed. I think this the present situation where Prachanda either had to continue as a Prime Minister, and he would be forced in a situation where he will have to prove seek vote of confidence in the Constituent Assembly, or he had to quit. He opted for the latter option. He did quit. He also said that he is resigning on moral grounds, because if he cannot function as a Prime Minister independently, no point being there. That was perhaps a good step that he took. But then the country cannot remain in vacuum, cannot remain without a government forever. Political parties have to explore possibilities to take the leadership, but that has to be based on certain programs and policies and minimum understanding or common programs. So that's what I think they are doing. So I'll call it a very selfish act if smaller parties, or say for instance if Maoist, which is the biggest party in the Constituent Assembly, will support another smaller party and try to rule by proxy. That will be very unfair game, because that will be an attempt to defeat the principal accountability, which is the core value of democracy. But then other parties, in a hung kind of scenario, many political parties coming together and forming in government is fine.
We'll continue with our conversation after a short break. Do stay with us. Welcome back to Power Talks with Santosh Shah. We are in conversation with Mr. Yubaraj Ghimire, Nepal's leading journalist and political analyst. What will be the nature of the new government, and when it will be formed, how long will it last? Well,
it's not yet clear, because the Communist Party of Nepal, Maoist, has been obstructing the proceedings of the Constituent Assembly or the Legislature Parliament, which has been asked by the President to elect its leader. So this might, we really don't know. It all depends on whether Maoists will continue to obstruct that. That will also mean obstruction in the process of electing a new leader.
But how long can that go?
Well, other possibilities can be explored, but ideally it's for the House to elect its leader in case of a situation of hung parliament where no political party has its own majority. The caretaker Prime Minister and Maoist chairman has said that it won't continue for long. Let's see. If they cooperate in the process, then it's for the political parties to come out with the program and explore alternative combinations or equation. That shouldn't take long. But the problem is, one or the two or three political groups cannot take the country to ransom and obstruct the process of forming a government. A country cannot run without a legitimate and valid government. One, because in that case, it cannot take any major decision. And two, even the international community will feel very hesitant to deal with this kind of government which has lost legitimacy.
During the last month of the formation of current political crisis,